Don Rosen in the morning. WRJN.
Oh, this is going to be a good hour. This is WRJN Historical Marker number 12. We're tracing the history of WRJN leading up to our 100th anniversary coming up on December 6th, 2026. Where's my head? 2026. I'm dealing too much with the history of the station with the 1900s. And one of the most influential and probably one of the longest owners of WRJN, Skip Bliss, is with me from Bliss Communications. He was the president and CEO, actually the owner, let's just call him the owner, of WRJN for 17 years. According to my records, you bought the place in 1997. You kept it to 2014. It was very profitable. We had 20 or so people working here at any given moment. And we think you're one of the best owners in the company's history. So that's pretty good. A lot of people have nothing but nice things to say about you. So that's pretty good. And thanks for joining us, Skip. Do appreciate it.
Well, you're more than welcome, and I guess I must have fooled more people than I thought.
Now you had a great list of people working with you, like Bob Daly, who was he ran the stations and so forth. But you also owned newspapers, and you owned one of the most influential papers, one of the biggest in the state, the Janesville Gazette. Now, give us a little bit of the history of that, because that was not started by you or your father. That goes way back.
Yeah. My great-grandfather in the middle 1800s brought a printing press to Janesville, and I think it came on a wagon or something.
It had to horseback.
But yeah, they published it for a long time, and my grandfather took over late in the 1800s, and we have a nice string of longevity in the family. So we've been around for a long time, and actually once the newspaper had really taken hold and Janesville was growing, my dad had an interest in radio, and he was a bit of a pioneer in radio himself. The license for WCLO that was issued was actually, I think the original license was issued to someone in the Kenosha area, and the call letters that they established, the WCLO, he had some business interest in some sort of a camp, and the camp was called Camp Lake Oaks or Lake something, and that's where the WCLO call letters came from at the time. So yeah, we've been around for a long time.
Now, was WCLO in Kenosha at one time? I think it was.
No,
it was never.
It was originally licensed, and that's, like I say, where the Camp Lake Oaks. But it was never. He never built it out, and so my dad bought the license and moved it to Janesville, and the rest is history.
So now you own, your company owns a newspaper at this point. You own a local radio station, WCLO. When did it start to expand to newspapers all over the state of Wisconsin, radio stations in Illinois, all of the Upper Peninsula, and all over the place?
Yeah, that all really kind of kicked off in the early 70s. It was a time when I think there was a lot going on. Newspaper families were having family-related discussions about who wanted to stay in the business and who wanted to cash out, and so there was turnover in the industry, and newspapers to a large degree played a pretty significant role in the growth and establishment of broadcast radio. So, as some of those newspaper families were having issues in terms of inheritance and stuff, I think the radio stations began to come into play too. And so, there's been a marketplace for quite a long time for newspapers and radio. There's more turnover, has been for 20 or 30 years than once was the case. If you owned a newspaper, your family owned it for eternity. It's not the case really anymore.
So how many newspapers did you own at the peak? And how many radio stations did you own at the peak? Do you remember?
Oh, I think we had 7 radio stations and 5 newspapers. The newspapers were all dailies, but they were, Janesville was the largest daily that we had. And then the other dailies were in the 5 to 10,000 circulation. They were smaller communities, Marinette, Wisconsin, Ironwood, Michigan. That was a fun one. I had oversight responsibility for both of those papers, and back in the ancient times, I traveled a fair amount to both of them, and traveling to Ironwood, Michigan, to do what I could to help those folks. That's a trip. It's the weather in Ironwood, needless to say, can be pretty rough, and so that was a tough trip to get up there. When I went, I usually stayed for a while because you never knew when the snow was going to melt.
Yeah. Hold on a second. We're talking to Skip Bliss, the former owner of WRJN Radio. And this is WRJN Historical Marker number 12. I didn't want to make you 13 in case you're superstitious. So I think we're going to jump from 12 to 14. I don't think anybody wants to be stuck with number 13. More with Skip coming up in just a moment. We'll talk about when they purchased WRJN, when they sold WRJN. All that's coming up in just a moment here. This is WRJN Historical Marker number 12. We're talking to former owner Skip Bliss. I've been blessed to have so many good owners to work with here, starting with Tony Gazzana, and then yourself. And then we also had Marcus Gazzana, which was Greg Marcus from Marcus Theaters was owning the station at one time, and current owner Sage Weil, who owns Civic Media. But I got to say, you're in that batch of the most wonderful owners I had the pleasure to work with, and I do appreciate it. Your company was never anything but good to me, and I've got a story coming up later on to tell people how good you were to me, and that's coming up a little later on. We'll save that. Okay, so we talked about your great-grandfather starting with the newspaper, brought a printing press and Conestoga wagon to Janesville. Probably, really. The 1800s?
Yeah.
Probably a Conestoga wagon with a printing press in it, drawn by horses, and it evolved into many newspapers and radio stations. What made you buy WRJN?
Well, I think, as you said, there were people. It was a time when there were transitions in families and local radio stations that were. It's not, they're not always handed down like I don't know, like TV sets and houses, but I think it was there was an opportunity. We liked radio. My dad was a radio guy, really. There were a lot of other members of our family over the years that were involved at the newspaper, but he loved radio, and had he died too early, and we had outside the family management, Marshall Johnston, who also had an interest. And, of course, our radio stations were being managed by Bob Daly, who was he was a bit of a legend in the Wisconsin radio world also. And when we sat down and decided that it was maybe time to take a look at expanding the company and whether we wanted to do that with newspaper acquisitions or if we wanted to look at radio, and we decided let's go looking for some radio stations. And the fact of the matter is that they're much like newspapers in their communities anyway. I mean, they're you're in the news business. Good radio stations are stations that are covering the local community and to a degree doing it pretty aggressively. So it was a good fit, and there were other people that we knew in the newspaper world that were already buying radio stations around the country. And so we got started, and eventually we were fortunate enough to get to 6 or 7 markets, and all small to medium size, much like Racine. And it was a good business.
You owned a station in Dixon, Illinois, correct?
Yes.
That was the station President Reagan used to work at. That's historic.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That. I was about to say that was historic.
Matter of fact, there was a local hotel outside of Dixon, and I was never aware of it, but the family that owned the Dixon properties decided that some of the meetings that were held between our company and theirs while we were looking at acquiring them, some of those they wanted to hold at a local facility that had some limited meeting space, as well as a hotel and restaurant attached to it. And the hotel, I can't remember the name of the hotel, of the property, but they had a room in Dixon where when Reagan visited, it was the Reagan room. And this was after much. There was a lot of time since that happened, but I stayed in the Reagan. I can remember when we were acquiring the Dixon radio stations. My room was the Reagan room, and so my claim to fame, knowing Mr. Reagan is limited to sleeping in apparently the bed that he slept in.
That puts you 1 degree away from Ronald Reagan. That's pretty good. Plus, you owned his radio station too. Hold on.
Yeah. Well, we got the radio station in the deal. So
we're talking to Skip Bliss, former owner of WRJN. We've got lots more to talk about. And he is historical marker number 12, the history of WRJN.
The sun's rising, the coffee's perking. Wouldn't be morning without Don Rosen. WRJN.
And this morning, we have historical marker number 12, the history of WRJN, and that is Skip Bliss, who owned WRJN from 1997 to 2014, 17 years. Hope I did the math right on that. I tried to do it without a calculator, and I think I did it in my head okay. And he bought the radio station from Tony Gazzana and Greg Marcus. Tony owned it when I first came here, and then he joined up with Greg Marcus from Marcus Theaters. They owned it for a while, and then they sold it to Skip, and you owned it for 17 years. Now, some of the people you had involved in running the station, Bob Daly and Mike O'Brien, those were 2 instrumental people who helped run the station And you were very good at selecting general managers because they all stayed a long time. And I don't know if you personally picked them out or it was up to Bob Daly and Mike O'Brien to pick them out. But one of the people you picked out, Chris Morrow, is our general manager here at the radio station today. So who picked out all these employees that you just happened to do a good job with?
Well, I can tell you for sure it was not my skill set. I basically came out of a newspaper background in terms of my own personal work time. Although when I finished my schooling, I did go to radio, and I spent 3 years in West Bend working as a sales rep for WBKV, and had 3 great years up there, and it was a really good experience that kind of gave me some enough background in the world of broadcasting that when I came back to Janesville, the newspaper was in need of some additional management support. I love my time in radio, and I was never the guy that picked personnel at any of the radio stations. I relied on Bob Daly primarily, and as time went on, Mike O'Brien, because of Mike's ongoing. Bob was a programmer and a broadcast on-air guy. His whole career was spent in that arena, and Mike was a broadcast sales guy, and they were a fabulous team. So when it came to acquiring these other radio stations, both of those guys were the primary people in looking at what do we have in the way of management at these stations that we were acquiring, and what do we have to do to add quality management going forward. And they were the guys.
I remember the first time I met you. The station was just sold to you, and I met with you, and you talked to me. I said, this guy's pretty nice. I mean, he's acknowledging my existence. That's pretty good right off the start.
Had you fooled, I guess, huh?
Yeah. But you had some great management teams here under you. We had Tim Edis, and of course, Chris Morrow was here under you. And people stayed a long time, which is hard. Not a big thing in radio. Radio is kind of a floating business. People stay a year or 2, 3 years, they move on. But under you, the station thrived. Our news department thrived, mainly, I think, because you came from a news background. So we had a great news team here, Tom Carco, Janet Hoff.
Yep.
And we had a great sports department with, also Gary Sewer was here. We had a great sports department carrying all the local sports. It was really a good local Racine radio station under you. And it really thrived. Sales were good. We made a lot of money. We got a new roof put on our building under you. I'll tell a quick story. We had a guy, right before you bought the radio station, we had somebody put a new roof on, did a bad job, and it rained inside the radio station. I don't mean drip, drip, drip. I mean it poured inside the radio station. And so Mary Jo Villa, who was your head of HR, her husband came in as soon as you bought the place and put a new roof on the building. And it hasn't rained since 1997 in here, so he did a good job. And I didn't really drip, 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 or rain, rain, rain in here. I also have to tell you a quick story because I don't want to forget. I want to tell you how important your company was to me. In 2011, I had to have open heart surgery. And I remember
that.
I remember you were here on some other purpose, and I had to tell you I was taking a month off because I was having this surgery, and I talked to you about it. I talked about artificial heart valves versus real because you had an artificial thing put in your knee. And when I was just about to have the surgery, the day before, you switched insurance companies.
Oh.
And that sent me into a turmoil because all the stuff I had done with the hospital and everything was based on an insurance company, and then they switched. And I had to get this medication the day before my surgery. They said, don't forget, you must take this the day before. And I went to Walgreens, and they didn't have my insurance because we switched. So I called Mary Jo Villa, who's the head of HR, and she said to me, I'm giving them the Bliss credit card. You get whatever you need, and we'll settle this up later on. And so I went in there, and I had to get these medications before the heart surgery, and it was all put on the Bliss American Express card. And it was an emergency. Cut to about 6 months later, I'm getting medications at Walgreens. They said, do you want this on your American Express card? I said, I don't have an American Express card. Yes, it's Bliss Communications. I said, no, take that off now. We're done with that. We're not going to use that anymore. And then what happened was it was a snafu because they sent all the names in from all the employees to the new company. The reason they didn't know it wasn't working right was because I was the first person to use it. And so they had to resend the names and everything was straightened out. But I was in a panic because I needed that medication. It was very expensive. And Mary Jo Villa came to the rescue and said, don't worry about it. Get what you need. It's all taken care of. And that's the type of people who were working for you. And I thought
we were very fortunate, and she was and she's still employed after our company was sold. She moved into a human resource position with a very, very large company, and she's done exceptional work for them. But she was she is a real quality person. She if you're going to specialize in human resources, you're going to be dealing with human needs, and she understood that better than anybody I'd ever met. And so she would find a way to deal with special needs, and I'm glad in your case it worked out.
I was in a panic because I was having a surgery in 12 hours, and they said, take that medication. Don't forget. So I thank Mary Jo Villa very much, and her husband for making a new roof on our building. That was pretty good, too. Now, you owned the station for 17 years, and over that time, you owned WFHR up in Wisconsin Rapids. You owned a bunch of stations around, but they were all really local radio stations. And just a little side note, the company that owns WRJN now, Civic Media, also owns WFHR as well. So,
really?
Yeah, but you made your stations all local radio stations, and you also gave autonomy to a lot of the program directors. And I was the program director here during the entire run of Bliss. And I remember I wanted to spend some money on advertising at WRJN. I went to TV, went to billboards, all that kind of stuff. And I remember it was you at a meeting said, well, what are your plans for it? And I was ready for that. And I had called the TV stations, the cable companies. I got all the right demos. I got all the shows with the right demos, and I gave it to you. And I remember you said, okay, go ahead with it. It's approved. And I said, fantastic. And it really helped the radio stations. And that's one thing I loved about working for Bliss. If you had a good idea and you can prove it was a good idea, go with it. And there was no double checking. No, we're not doing it because we didn't come up with the idea. And even when I made changes in the programming, I explained it to even Bob Daly, whoever it was, and our general manager. And he said, okay, you think it's a good idea? I trust you. Go with it. And I love that autonomy and stations did well. I mean, I didn't make any stupid errors that I know of. And I loved that aspect of Bliss Communications owning WRJN because we saw at the time music on AM radio wasn't doing that well. So we went to a talk format at the time. And it really did well for us. We did local talk. We had some national shows in there because talk hosts are very expensive. And eventually went back to oldies, where we're thriving today with oldies. And we do some talk like we're doing right now with you. We do some talk radio on the morning show. But I love the fact that you let the program directors in your company and your general managers run the radio stations. A lot of companies don't do that. They run it from one central location, but you didn't do that.
Well, we spent time, I like, as I said before, the guy that says he did everything in his company and was the only person who was responsible for its success you're not getting the whole story. I was so fortunate because I had people that tutored me and took an interest in me when I was coming into a business that, sure, it was a family business, and it was what was talked about over dinner a lot of times around our house. But there were people who had been hired within our company for many, many years before I got there, and the people that were hired were real quality people, hardworking, smart, and people with a background that they brought to our company that was invaluable. And I think the idea that you try to find people in a community or people in the industry to run these properties that companies buy is a critical decision. And in the case of we were fortunate. To a large degree, the people that were doing the hiring were veteran, experienced broadcast people, and good people hire good people. And we were lucky. We were fortunate. We did pretty well, I think, with, and we have a lot of people today who are, from the period that I was working in the business. People who are now retired, doing other things, but they're still involved. It's like you talking to me. I still like talking about the business, word gets around. There's quality companies to work for in any sector of business, and people like to work for good companies. We were just lucky. We attracted some really great people.
Now you
like
built,
yourself.
Thank you. You built a giant printing press. I mean, this place, I took a tour of it, was mammoth. And talk about that a little bit. What made you want to get into that multi-million-dollar printing press?
Well, it was a factor of aging equipment in our existing plant. And opportunities to move from just printing our newspaper this was in Janesville, and it was much more than the press. The press was the feature of the building, but it was a facility, and from the get-go, it was built not only to print our newspaper, and in Janesville, it's a pretty good-sized newspaper. We were about a 32,000 circulation daily. But that plant's been in existence now for, probably going on 20 years. But at the time, other newspapers were dealing with aging equipment, newspapers in basically the southern half of Wisconsin. And there were opportunities there to work with them and say, look, instead of reinvesting in all of this equipment and all, the newspaper business is equipment intensive, and it's very expensive. And so the opportunity to print up for other people was pretty attractive. It worked.
What made you put an end to Bliss Communications? There had to be a big decision. You didn't wake up one morning and say, you know what? I think I'm done. It didn't work like that. What made you give up and sell the entire company, radio properties, newspapers, and get out of the business? What brought that on?
Well, I got old. It happens. And, I do have a son who is active still in the business and is working actively for the people who purchased our company. But the media world's changing, and in many respects, unfortunately, it's changing, particularly for the newspaper industry. It's very expensive to operate newspapers. There are a lot of equipment, and a lot of people, and you need resources out in the field to bring people the news about their community. Not so much the rest of the world, but the advent of the internet and cell phones and being able to access news from around the world with a click of a button on your phone. Unfortunately, in many respects, it's been very hard on the newspaper industry. And not only me, but people who worked with me saw that happening. And it's happened all over Wisconsin. Newspapers have changed hands. Some are no longer being published, and that's a very sad thing, because they're heavily vested in covering their communities, and those communities are not getting the intensive kind of news coverage that they used to get. So, that's pretty much the story.
I know how you feel, because when I read in one of the trades that a radio station went dark, which means it goes off the air, I always feel bad, because it was once a vibrant part of the community, employing a lot of people. Now it goes dark. And that's a horrible feeling for me, because I've been in radio for 53 years, my entire life, and I've been working continuously in radio for 53 years. So I take it like you take the newspapers personally when they go out. I take the radio stations personal. Do you know, in 53 years, I was only fired once from a job. Once in 53 years. You know what station that was? This one. The guy you sold it to fired me. And, here I am back again. But I want to say, in the last few minutes here, we have been blessed in this radio station with great owners. Now, if Tom Karko was here, he could tell you the owners from day one. We had the Racine Journal News, which is where WRJN gets its call letters from. We've had so many great owners over the years. I worked with Tony Gazzana, I said, then with Greg Marcus Gazzana, and you and the folks here at Civic Media. They brought back local radio, just like you. When you left, it was a local radio station. The people at Civic Media came back with the phrase, hometown radio refreshed. So this station, you're at the whim of whoever owns it at that time. And for 17 years, the people you had in charge, Bob Daly, Mike O'Brien, everybody down the line, kept it a local radio station, so it was able to still exist with great audiences. Our numbers are just great in the ratings. We are doing very well here because you kept it a local station, and Civic Media, Sage Wild, kept it a local radio station. So for that, I know the city of Racine, all the people in the county, and of course the employees here, thank you, because for 17 years, Skip, you kept it a vibrant radio station. And I'm going to let out one little secret a lot of people don't know. Your name's not Skip, it's Sydney.
That's correct. I'm a junior. That was my father's name, and so it was apparently it was too complicated to have and when it was time for breakfast in the morning to call Sid for breakfast because there were two of us in the house. So my dad was a sailor, and he nicknamed me Skipper.
We let that dirty little secret out of the bag finally after all these years.
Yep.
Because I never remember anybody calling you anything but Skip. You know, I remember there used to be a fear that went through the station. Skip is coming in today. Uh-oh. Skip's coming. We always thought some horrible thing was. Uh-oh, Skip's. And all you did was come in. I want to see my radio station and meet everybody again. Say hello. But it was Skip's coming.
Yeah, I actually had a desk for a while that I could park myself at when I would come to the radio station. So.
Well, let me say that we miss you. You're a great human being. I'm so glad you had a chance to be historical marker number 12 and not 13. Historical marker number 12. And for anybody missing the broadcast, this will be podcast this week. And so everybody will be able to get it. It will also be I think the Racine Public Library is going to preserve this forever. They're going to put it in their archives. So 100 years from now, they're going to say, who owned this place back in the late 90s? And we're going to find out. Skip, thank you very much for coming on this morning. I really do appreciate it, and I want you to hold on the line a second, okay?
You bet.
Don't go anywhere. Stay right where you are. Wow, that was great. Historical marker number 12, Skip Bliss, former owner of WRJN. Exactly 8 o'clock on the noggin. Let's check our news.
Local news and timeless hits. WRJN, Racine Kenosha.